My presentation today is all about HTML5. I know that there are many interesting stuff about JavaScript, fancy APIs, and so on. Most of us are focused on those topics, but the more I work in this field, the more I realize that we are missing basically the... Do you see my slides?
Yeah.
Sorry. Wait a second. That should work. Do you see my slides? Okay, yeah. Awesome. So, yeah, my presentation today is about HTML5. And as I said before, we are focused on fancy JavaScript APIs and so on. But the more I work in this field, the more I realize that we are missing the building blocks of our applications. So let's see how HTML5 works and how we can provide some semantic to our websites. A little bit about me. I'm a lead software developer at Tripol. I work since 10 years in this field. I've worked for other companies. I'm the main maintainer of Riot.js, and I've met Michel Hunziker. This is my highlight in my life at the moment. But I'm sure I will have others. I hope so. So let's go forward. So what we are going to learn today, so we're going to learn what does semantic mean, what's HTML, what's the content flow, what's a page outline, and how we can use the HTML5 microdata to enhance the semantic of our applications. So what we're going to skip today is stuff about accessibility, even if they are really important. They are out of topic for today. New HTML5 tags and the semantic of each single HTML5 tag, because we don't have enough time for it. Let's start about semantic. So when I'm talking about semantic, when we talk about semantic, we are talking about the meaning of what we are discussing. So the semantic focuses it's focusing the relationship between signifiers. So it's the meaning behind words, behind a graphic design, behind our HTML. So what's really important to understand is that semantics it's not about the rules. So in our case, if you build an HTML website that is perfectly valid with HTML and it has the best performance on Lighthouse and so on, it doesn't mean that the semantic of your HTML has a meaning or has the meaning you would like to give to that. So semantic, it's really a complex topic because the semantic is based on the context. So for example, let's take a sentence. John saw the man on the mountain with a telescope. So if you read this sentence, you probably could read it twice, check. This sentence could have a different meaning depending on the context in which it will be used. So who is on the mountain? John, the man, or both? Who has the telescope? And in the same way, we're gonna use semantic also in HTML to give a more meaningful meaning to our web applications. So back to the tech stuff. So HTML, it was found. It was thought to describe how our web pages semantically should behave. What's the meaning behind those web pages? And originally, it had also cues about the appearance of the document. But today it's 2020, so you shouldn't use HTML to style your stuff, but you should use, of course, CSS. But it's really important to understand that the next step is with HTML5, the W3C and another group that I call WG, they enhanced the meaning of our HTML5 tags to provide even more meaning to our web applications. Now, at this point, probably if we were live, I would ask who knows the difference between article and a section. But unfortunately, let's check. Does anyone know that in the chat? Nope. Okay. Whatever. Yeah. Here we go. So the difference between an article and a section, just for you, just today, it's that an article should contain a standalone content of your application that could be used anywhere else. So for instance, if you are running a product, an e-commerce, and you have a product that, let's say, like you are Migros and you want to sell your stuff, and your fridge probably could scrape HTML and find out that you are missing, for example, cheese, and providing article tags allows older technologies like a fridge to understand that your web application has a product wrapped in an article tag, and it could, in theory, just order that product for you. And the section, on the other hand, it's just a section of your web application that could contain, in theory, different articles. It's quite a different, complex topic, but once you get used to it and once we go forward, you will better understand. So HTML5 introduces sectioning tags that allows us to define better the meaning of our application. So through the sectioning tags and through the headings, we could define the semantic of a web application that it's called, in our case, content flow. Who has heard about content flow before? Let's do another check. Is anyone here? Nope. But let's go forward. So the content flow, it's the semantic of a web application, and we could measure it via page outline. We will see all the stuff in a second. So let's check, for example, some examples. I took two websites that have completely a different content flow, completely. I mean, that one website uses more a flat outline and another one that uses a nested outline. I'm using tool to check that. So, for example, this website has quite a flat outline, so the contents are located almost on the root of the web application, and that's totally okay if that's your intention to communicate that kind of meaning. But Apple, that has, for example, a better nested structure using thanks to the use of HTML5, provides more deep meaning to the contents of its website. So nor of those approach is bad or good, but you need to know that those things exist, and no matter if search engines are using different algos to parse or markup, we need to stick to the plan, we need to stick to the specs, and that the only thing that we have to provide semantic to our HTML is through the content flow and the outline. Let's check some examples so to see whether we could simulate that. So that would be really cool if we were live, but unfortunately we are not live. So let's take a straightforward example. So a heading and then H2. How does the outline of this web application look like? So in this case, we have just a main title and of course a nested H2. This is pretty simple, works for HTML4 and so on. But if we invert that, if we set an H2 and then H1, the outline algorithm in HTML5 places both headings on the same position. Now it doesn't matter if Google crawls those content and understands them differently, but we need to stick to specs, to the HTML5 specs, and specs tell us that if there is a heading with a higher order hierarchy, it resets the outline So if we check, for example, something with the main tag, that is also a new tag, we need to remember that the main tag is not a sectioning content like article or like section. So in this case, as you see, the nested title, it's just on the same level like the H1 here, because it's not nested in a sectioning tags. I know those topics, if you have never heard about that, could be confusing, but it's totally worth to understand them. So the more you are going to use them, the more you will get used to them. So if, for instance, we use, for example, an article for that, we need to remember that article, it's a sectioning tag. So in this case, it affects the outline of this markup. So we have a heading, main title, but this H2, according to the specs, has the same, it's placed on the same level like the H1 nested in this article, that, as we learned before, this is a standalone part of our application that in theory our fridge could parse and buy products with it. And if we get fancy, for example, here we have an H6, an H1 and a section. This is really fancy because, as you see, regardless the rendering of this markup, the H6 will be the main title of this application. Then we're going to have an important title that is also on the same level, but in the section, the H1 here has a lower level than the H6. So this is basically how the HTML5 outline works. I invite you to experiment with it, but it's really interesting once you get used to that. A few years ago, Jeffrey Zeldman was talking about another pandemic. It's not that fun, but it was called diabetes. So it's the problem that we start using too many divs in our applications without really caring about the output of or the semantic of our pages. So we need to try to find the right balance between consistency, so writing divs and design, using them for styling purposes, but we need to also get used to analyze the outline of our web applications thanks to the use of HTML5. This is just an example you see here, but you can get wild with it. Unfortunately, all we saw before are just topics about don't provide really a lot of all the range of possibilities of meanings that we could include in our web applications. So for that, the HTML5 specs introduced microdata. So microdata are properties that we could add to our HTML. There are several specs for it, but allows us to extend the meaning of our markup, and we will see it in a while. They are maintained on schema.org. I know that Google makes a huge use of it. We will see it in an example afterwards. So, but what's really important that the search engines today, they are already using to index our web pages. So for example, if we see those results on the left, they are all using microdata. For example, if we check the casino theater example, in that application, I have used microdata to list all the events, and Google could scrape the stuff from the HTML and index the events and understand when they will be, when they will start and what's the event detail. The same goes for products. You can add microdata to enhance the reviews of a product or anything. Without microdata, no luck. You just have flat results on Google. So how do they work? In the spec I've used for this example, we use the attributes, adding microdata. In this case, for example, as you see, the render markup, it doesn't show a lot of meaning. It's just a P tag, but adding microdata to it just allows us to describe the content that is listed in this P tag. So Of course, you can check your markup using a Google tool for it. But that's really the meaning we are communicating with our markup using microdata. The same goes for, I mean, you shouldn't do that, but you can also cheat. So for example, here I have a text, ciao mama, but I could add also microdata that are hidden to the rendering, but that could be provided to the search engines. Of course, you shouldn't do that, and if that could cause penalizations if you will be detected. But it's really important to understand the difference between rendering stuff and providing meaning to them. I really wanted to add this slide. That's my mom with one of my guitars. So and that's the meaning of the previous markup with microdata. But let's see how we could use, because it's pretty an abstract thing, but if we go on Google, we have a huge list of examples that could provide us better hints about our could guide let's check, for example, the breadcrumbs example. Here we we're not using divs for them, but there are specs for them, and if you see how they will, let's see. So this, Google is using them to display sub pages using breadcrumbs. So it's really important that you use those stuff, because search engines are using them already today. I mean, since a couple of years. All right, so those are the links of my presentation. So the stuff I've used, the outliner, I've used a couple of browser extensions for it. And yeah, I've been Gianluca Guarini. I work for Dripol. We are looking for web developers right now. So if you're interested and if you want to work with me, just apply to our jobs. Thank you. If you have questions, you can drop them in the chat.